Hey everyone, welcome back to Data and Donuts. My name is Aaron. I'm here with my friend and colleague Z Reisz. Today we're going to talk about presentations. But before we get into our conversation today, I would like Z to tell us a little bit about himself.
Hey everyone, nice to sort of meet you all or see you all as we go on this. So I'm the Senior Director of Institutional Assessment, Research and Planning at Santa Barbara City College. I'm also the Accreditation Liaison Officer and the Grants Officer. So I get a lot of opportunity to do presentations throughout my work.
Excellent. And so today, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about presentations. So what makes a good presentation?
Oh, that's always a tough one, but it is kind of one of the funnest things, especially if you've ever been a teacher. You know, you've gone through and you've made your slides and you've made some good slides and you've made some bad slides. And over the time, you've probably gotten a feel for which ones are the good ones. So when I'm making a presentation, kind of my guiding principle is pretty straightforward. I'm going to tell them what I'm going to tell them. I'm going to do that kind of short and sweet. Then I'm going to tell them that thing. And I'm going to go into as much detail as I need to at that point. And then I'm going to wrap up by telling them what I told them. And it's a nice little package that really helps bring people along. It gives them a heads up of where they're going. Then it kind of gives them all the detail. And then you just give a little reminder, you know, in case you got lost in the detail, you're pulling them back out to say, this is what we covered. So that's my general focus when I do a presentation, is just making sure that I cover those three basics. Tell them what I'm going to tell them it, and then tell them what I told them. And then you get into all the other considerations of your slides and how you want to do that stuff. There's a whole lot of personal preference in that one. And I think that's actually going to get into our next. Nope, that's not our next one. So I'll cover that one in this one as much as I care about on that one. I don't know about how you all feel about it, but when someone just reads off their slides, I don't usually find it the most engaging of presentations. So I try to kind of keep the presentation wording rather small or few. So you have some bullet points. Try to bring in some sort of color and stuff to kind of liven things up, so you're not just looking through a black and white list of bullet points. And then, you know, keep your slides succinct. Really limit how much language you're putting on that slide, because really you want to be the one sharing that language. And that kind of comes with how comfortable you are with your material and everything. Have you practiced through it and all that? So it's kind of a few tips on that I follow when I'm going through that.
So that's excellent. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you consider? You said you introduced the idea, you mentioned it would add some detail, and then you reinforce that idea. And so as we develop these out, what considerations should we take, and what do you take when you consider developing the presentation? And you touched on just a few bullets, but let's talk a little bit about the details. And we'll just use an example of like when you're presenting something on data.
Yeah. So this one comes to know your audience, know your audience, know your audience. It is incredibly different presenting to a group of our RP Nation fellows and saying, hey, look, let's talk about some data. You can throw up a table that's got logistic regression coefficients on it, and you're going to see some happy faces. You do that same thing to your board of trustees, and well, it's likely to not go well. So really think about who it is you're talking to and what is that final point that you want them to have at. You want to keep those things really clear in your mind as you're developing your presentation. So you're thinking, okay, this is who I'm talking to. This is what I want them to bring away from it. And then you're going to start to tailor it that way. So if you're dealing with folks that don't really go into the technical aspects of whatever your work is, if you're presenting some research findings, that's cool. You don't need to worry about that. That means that, you know, they may want to talk about those. And if so, they'll bring them up, but don't hammer them with them. Keep them high level. Keep them with what the takeaways were. Keep them with what some of the limitations are. But, you know, if they need the details, they'll usually ask for them. So kind of stay at that level and really understand who your audience is, especially if it's something like your board of trustees where you're going to be regularly presenting to them. You can actually get to know those various members. I'd recommend watching some of the previous board meetings so you get a feeling for what questions you're likely to get from some people. If you're doing something that's more of your whatever your highest kind of college planning committee is, you know, that's a bit of a broader audience than your board of trustees. You're likely to have about 30 or so people in there. So kind of thinking through, okay, what am I working with in here? And you're going to try to hit that kind of medium ground between enough detail, but not too much, and then still really bringing forward the broad conversation. So that's probably what I mainly think when I'm developing it is who's my audience, what's my main point that I want them to get from it, and then what do I need to give them it to get them there? So a lot of kind of trying to put myself in their shoes and their pants.
Excellent. I think that's really a key, really getting back to the purpose, is trying to while you introduce the technical aspects, but understand your audience on how much technical jargon or information they can consume and feel comfortable. And so with that, when looking at technical information, and you touched on it a little bit, but when you mentioned logistical regression and even working with our colleagues across RP, there's sometimes a varying level of understanding with technical approaches. So when looking at technical approaches, are there a few different ways you introduce the same idea?
Man, that's a tough one. And I don't get this one too often. We usually don't go into too much of the technical details when we're presenting. So when I am presenting technical details to generally a more general audience where I'm like, okay, you're likely have not kind of confronted this, or maybe the last time you confronted this was in your intro to stats class back in undergrad. So kind of thinking of that. And then once you get into the technical topics, really making sure you go slow enough and that you have clear examples and you walk people through what you're doing there. So if you're kind of trying to bring people along with a logistical regression, say you're kind of presenting to your English faculty on, they were wondering how their concurrent support classes are doing with their AB 705, and you decided to use logistic regression for that. Totally a good method, but you're going to have a big hurdle when you get to working with them on those technical details. And that's where you kind of really want to build some sort of tool that they can work with. And ideally, you got a friend over there where you can do a little test pilot and say, hey, look, I'm going to do this spreadsheet. And kind of, if you put these things in here and you toy around with this, does this help bring people along? What questions arises in your brain as you're kind of going through this? So with the technical details, really kind of step it back, go slow, and kind of think through, how do I bring people through on all of the steps on this? Where are going to be some of those confusion points? And hopefully you get that developed and you got someone you can pilot it with before you go prime time.
I really like that concept of piloting and having someone who's maybe external to that, almost even information to say, is this consumable? I think that's a total thing I'm going to adopt probably in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, not just for our colleagues watching, but for myself included. And now we go to our bonus question. What do you prefer, coffee or tea? And what is your favorite kind or brand?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I love them both. Love them both. I used to work in a coffee shop for, like 4 years of my life. So pretty attached to coffee, but then I drink tea most of the week. So I don't know, Aaron. I just don't know. I love coffee so much that I drink it only on the weekends when I've got time to just relax and enjoy it. And then tea during the week, because heaven knows I need some common stuff throughout the week. So I don't know what my answer is on that one.
Excellent. Well, what kind of coffee do you like? How's that sound?
Oh, generally go with a light to medium roast. French press is my preferred tool, but I'm open to pour over and all your other options. A little bit scared of drip coffee makers. You've all looked inside of them. It gets scary in there.
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Z, for your insight today. And I look forward to collaborating with you and giving more presentations with you in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Bye.